Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful Friday, May 14th. I'm very excited to introduce Mr. Seth Laidlaw. Mr. Seth is a Pittsburgh-based artist, arts administrator, educator, director, and producer. He currently serves as senior arts education program manager at the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and president of Stage 62, a community theater in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. Seth holds a Master's of Arts Management from Carnegie Mellon University. He is passionate about audience and community engagement and finding ways to connect with others through theater arts and storytelling. And with that, it is my pleasure to give you Mr. Seth Laidlaw.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. Good to be here today.
Hey.
Hi. Before I get started, I had a question for everyone. So I was listening to this podcast a couple days ago, and the host of the podcast, I don't know, do people like podcasts? I like podcasts. The host of the podcast said that their dad always said that the world is full of either doers, thinkers, or charmers, and that we are always one of those things over the other. I mean, we might be all of those things a little bit, but one of them is sort of the standout, either a thinker, a doer, or a charmer. And I'm curious today, you can write it in the chat or you can say it out loud, everyone here. Which one would you say you are? Are you more of a doer, a thinker, or a charmer? And whatever that means to you.
Thinker.
Thinker?
I'd say thinker.
Mm.
And Trinity in the chat said thinker as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think I'm a combination of everything.
I know, right?
I think I fit into all three of those. Which one the most? Wow. Probably a thinker. I think I am.
Yeah. Michael in the chat said doer or charmer. Trinity said Miss Carla is a doer.
I said all of them. It's
she
hard.
does everything. So
yeah, right.
Nicoya, what do you think? Oh, you said thinker. Nicoya said thinker. Okay, cool.
Oh,
gotcha.
Great. Yeah, I think it's interesting. For me, I'm a doer. And yes, I also am a thinker and a little bit of a charmer sometimes, but doer is probably what I lead with. And when I think of my job and the work that I do, specifically in nonprofit and in the arts, I feel like you find a lot of doers because we're not always in it for the money. You're in it because you're passionate about something, you want to get something done, and you want it to be the best that it can be. And when you think about those different aspects and the types of careers that you might go into as well, like a thinker, I automatically think of like a mathematician or even like a financial manager or someone that likes to think analytically at their job. And then a charmer, I automatically think of like sales or marketing or something like that, right? So it's interesting to think of those three things and sort of how that might take your path or your direction based off of your personality. So thanks for sharing a little bit about who each of you are. So now I know who I'm talking with a bit. And yeah, today I'm gonna just talk a little bit about my background. I have some presentation so you can see some photos and not stare at my face. And then we'll have some time at the end for any questions that you might have too. A little bit about me. I grew up an hour north of Pittsburgh in Butler, Pennsylvania. And it's not that far away, but worlds different in my eyes. And growing up, I loved telling stories, and I did that in the form of writing. I loved writing, and in high school especially, I was involved in any journalism clubs, in the school newspaper, was editor of the newspaper, and that's where I got my passion and love of telling stories. But I also was super involved in the arts. I was in choir, I was in marching band, I was in the musicals throughout high school, and loved being able to, yeah, Mr. Jeremy, performer. And just loved telling stories that way too. And so when I went to undergrad, I went to Duquesne University and came to Pittsburgh, and I studied journalism and public relations because that's sort of what I knew and what the direction I thought I was going into. But while I was there, I
Say that one more
continued.
time. What did you study?
I studied journalism and public relations, which are both a lot about telling good stories, right? And shaping stories, especially with public relations too. But while I was there, I got really involved in the arts still, and they had a student-run theater company at Duquesne that I got involved in, performing on stage, but also working behind the scenes in what I now know as arts administration. And so during that time, I joined the board of this theater company. I was able to pick shows, hire directors and choreographers, build sets for the shows. They gave us a budget, which I still can't believe that they gave me a like $10,000 budget to put on a show. And, you know, I really got to learn about what it takes to put on a musical. And that's where I started to understand this world of arts administration that I'm in now. And I started doing some internships around the city too. And so I worked at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater in East Liberty, if you guys have been there before, or the Pittsburgh CLO and the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, where I work now. And I interned there during my undergrad. And then I was like, okay, wait, this is how I want to tell stories. This is how I want to move forward in my career, and needed to learn more. I didn't know everything, and I wanted to know everything. And so I continued on for my master's of arts management and focused in on nonprofit arts management and arts administration at Carnegie Mellon. And that's what I do now. I work at the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. As Mr. Jeremy said, I am the senior program manager for arts education, which means that I manage a variety of programs that are done by the Cultural Trust specific to arts education. So learning programs. One day I'll be working with a group of young children that are 6 months to 3 years old. We actually just had a program this morning with 300 students in early childhood classrooms across the city that joined for an online workshop and performance. And then the next day I'll be working with a group of older adults in their 80s that are doing a theater class. And there's quite a variety of the types of programs that I get to work on. I have a little bit of a presentation to show you a bit about the Cultural Trust in case you don't know much about that. So let me just open up that slideshow. All right, can everyone see my screen? Yeah, great. So what we're looking at is a map of downtown cultural district. The Pittsburgh Cultural Trust was founded by with this mission of making downtown and what we know as the cultural district, which is this map right here, a great place to live, work, and play. That was the focus of the organization that I work for. And what that looks like now is that we own and operate a lot of the spaces that are downtown within the cultural district, theater venues and art galleries that maybe you've attended in the past. It's been a while for all of us, those who like theater. But yeah, all the spaces in red are owned and operated by the Trust, like the Benedum Center, the Byam Theater, the O'Reilly, and even some of the visual arts galleries like Space Galleries and Wood Street. And we then rent those spaces out to other companies within Pittsburgh, and even nationally, internationally, they'll come in and use those spaces. But in addition to that, the Trust also presents a lot of their own work and performances, including, this is where you get to look at pretty pictures, Broadway. Has anyone ever seen this? We know what this is from. Little Wicked.
Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, it is. It's called Wicked. It's a Broadway musical, very popular. Another one that is very popular, Hamilton.
Oh, I wanted to see it.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Hey, Trinity, you need tickets. I know the guy who plays Aaron Burr. You let me know. I'll hook it up.
All right.
You
Well, hook
know
me
him
up
too,
too.
Trinity. You know him too, Trinity. You met him a few months
That's right. He
ago.
was a
that
Friday
one-
speaker. That's right.
Then he come
came
to
for
one of our guest speakers.
Nice.
I remember him.
That's great. Yeah. So, you know, the trust brings in these shows like Hamilton, and we get to, in education, I get to work with those artists while they're in town, do some master classes and workshops and other different events, and also get to see the shows. We also present dance companies. You know, Alvin Ailey should be coming back soon in our next season, and just some other amazing companies. And I'll get to work with those dancers while they're in town, again, for some other workshops and master classes. We also do big public art events. I don't know if anyone remembers the big duck that was on the river. It was a public art piece during the International Festival of Firsts. Fun fact, that duck lives somewhere in Pittsburgh still, deflated and hiding right now, but it's still around. So maybe one day it'll just come back onto the river. But the trust is responsible for a lot of these public art events and bigger festivals. This, I think, is from the Arts Festival, which will be coming back this year in June at Point State Park and throughout, and we get to present free music acts and other artists there as well. And then, of course, arts education, where I work mostly. So I'm lucky that I get to work on those shows and with touring artists, but then we also at the Trust work with local artists, teaching artists that will work in classrooms and take their art form and bring it to the classroom and work across the semester with students. And so we work in hundreds of schools throughout the year and in the school year, and also invite those schools down to the theaters and have a nice sort of back and forth there. And so I get to oversee all of those programs, working with about 40 to 50 local artists to make all of that happen. A little glimpse into a week in my life, or a couple weeks. This is most recently. So I, 2 weeks ago, I moderated a pre-show discussion with Rick Miller. It's this guy in the top left-hand corner. He has a one-man show called Mac Homer, which is Shakespeare's Macbeth and The Simpsons, told by The Simpsons. It is really funny. And we got to do an online Q&A with him, learn a little bit about him as an artist and what he's been doing in quarantine. He lives in Canada, what life is like there in Canada right now. And that was moderated by a few friends from Albert Gallatin High School. And then the next day, this picture here on the top right, I worked with artists from London in a London theater called Akin, and they create theater pieces for young children. And they worked with a group of our local artists to on a workshop, and we got to learn a little bit about how they develop their own theater work. And so these are a bunch of local artists being silly on Zoom. It was probably the most fun I've ever had on a Zoom call, when we were playing with light and getting underneath our blankets and having a lot of fun and learning something too. This bottom left-hand corner, the next day I got to work with a local theater artist, David Minifield, Mr. David there, and he's leading a senior theater class with older adults, and they are ages 65 and up, and they're looking at scenes, and they're going to be performing their own scene over Zoom, and we'll be recording it and sharing it out. And so I helped to develop that program, and then I get to make it happen. This middle picture here, just last week, I got to work with a video production team, and we recorded this local belly dancer. Her name's Joanna Abel, and we recorded a 10-minute performance of her doing solo belly dance performance, and it's now in its editing phases and will be presented during the arts festival. So I'll make sure to share that out. It's pretty cool. You get to learn a little bit about belly dance as well.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Seth. For any of you, I am Michael and Nicoye. I know you were here for this. I'm not sure if anybody else was, but if anybody was here for the in-person Future Makers a couple years ago when we did painting and sculpture, Joanna Abel was actually the teacher of the painting class who was playing all that awesome old school reggae music while we were going in. So a lot of multi-talented people, Mr. Seth included. So
yes, thank you. She is very, very multi-talented and owns her own belly dance studio. So this was an opportunity for us to showcase what she does in her art form too, another part of her art.
And I'm sorry to just, I figured I would just have one big interruption. I'm sorry. Trinity asked in the chat, do you act personally?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have my chat up. I should pull that up to make sure. I do act, and actually, that is my next slide, so I can't wait to show you some of that. The squiggly people, I know the squiggly people. Yeah, but yes, I do act. This last photo here is me just 2 days ago. I'm a director right now for a musical that opens tomorrow night. So we are in rehearsal process right now, and I'm working with a cast of 4 to produce this show, and I'm serving as the director. And so that's what I get to do at night, but I also act a lot as well. Here are some photos of me on the stage when I get to act. I work with community theater a lot in Carnegie that I mentioned, Stage 62. So these are from some shows over the last few years. This bottom right is Hairspray, the musical. I played Corny Collins. This one on the bottom left was the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Really, really silly, fun musical. I got to play William Barfay. He has a really odd accent that I was going to go into right now, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. And then this top right one was
Mr. Seth, I do all the ridiculous accents around here. All right.
Okay. So good. I don't want to take
like
that from you.
Yeah.
This top right one was Annie the musical. I played Rooster. If you guys have ever seen that one, it's kind of like the evil character, which was super fun. And then this top left one was actually from a couple months ago. I was in a new musical that was at the New Hazlitt Theater in the North Side, if you guys have ever been there, at that theater. And we recorded that production, but then it was streamed live. And so that was my first time getting to work on a new musical. So I do get to act every once in a while too. Just a couple more slides that I wanted to mention. I listed here a bunch of different roles and jobs that maybe you've heard of or maybe not. And these are people that I get to work with every day in my work. We have programmers, which I would consider myself one, artistic directors that sort of lead the artistic vision for a company, arts educators, we have show marketers, financial managers, fundraisers, stage managers. There's a bunch of different arts admin jobs based off of what you like to do that help to make things happen. And then as an artist, there's more than just who you see on the stage than the actors, right? There's these costume designers that help to make these ridiculous costumes. I always laugh at this green suit that I have on in Annie. It's so ugly, but that's the character. He's kind of like an ugly, evil character. And someone, thought about that and helped to develop and then made that costume piece. Hair and makeup designers, lighting designers, scenic artists, sound engineers. There's so many different career options within the arts that help to make that piece come together. And the last thing I wanted to mention, this is a show that I'm working on that opens tomorrow afternoon. It's called Forever Plaid. It's like 1950s doo-wop style music, 4-part harmonies. And it's these 4 guys, and they actually it's a ridiculous story. They died in a car crash and they get to come back for one day only and perform the show that they never got to perform when they were alive. And so they're back for this one show, and it's super funny, fun, great music for an older audience, especially. And when I look at this picture, though, just to mention the many different careers involved to make this happen, it's not just the performers that you see on the stage. The scenic designer helped sketch this whole thing out. They're like architectures for a day or for however long the show runs, and they sketch it out, they design it, they paint it, they build it, they put it up, and then in 2 weeks this will all disappear, this world goes away. That's my music director, Joy. She's a pianist.
What's this play called again?
What's it called?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Forever Plaid. It's a 90-minute little musical. It's a fun one. But music director's here. She helps get this band together. She's leading all of the music, anything that you hear. We have a props master. I, as the director, give him a list of any handheld objects that are needed in the show, and he will either find them, buy them, or make them. In this show, I asked him, this is an odd props thing. I was like, I need puppets, 4 puppets that look exactly like the 4 guys that you see on the stage. And so he made these puppets out of sock and fabric, and they are quite hilarious. I wish I had a picture of them, but that is one person's job that takes all of that and then has to like put it all together. A sound designer that helps to blend those 4 voices, and engineers where those speakers that you see in the corner are and how it projects out to the audience. I don't know how it works. It's wild to me. And then the things that you don't see, the choreographer, the stage manager who helps to keep everything in check, the producer who maintains the money part of it, so I don't have to worry about it. They have the budget and they tell us how much we're allowed to spend. The box office, the people at the front door that handle tickets whenever you arrive to see a show, the marketers that help you and help the audience discover the show so you know where it is and how to attend. And that is just a glimpse at the different jobs that exist all within this one production that is coming up tomorrow. So I just rambled for a long time, but hopefully somewhat interesting to just get some insight into some of the work that I do. And yeah, I'd love to open up to any other questions that you might have, or anything that was interesting to you in the different types of careers within the arts.
So I figured.
What's your favorite?
Oh, sorry, Raynell. No, please, you go first.
I was gonna say, what is your favorite part? Because like you do a lot in the arts. So like, what is your favorite part? The acting, the journalism, like what is it?
See, this is why, and I don't know if you were here at the beginning when I said I'm a doer. I do a lot in the arts because I love it all. I want it all. But my favorite is, oh, that's tough. That's a tough question. I would say maybe directing, because it's the one job where you get to work with the most people and a lot of creative people, and you have to find a way to like bring that vision to one spot to make it cohesive, and to then have this final project that everyone understands and enjoys. So I really like how collaborative being a director is, and what you have to do with that.
With the directing, would you do the writing too, or do you just have whoever wrote it, the idea, you just bring it to life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for this show and for others, like Hamilton and whatnot, there's a playwright, there's a playwriting career that they are the ones putting all of that script together. And then you as a director are handed the script with notes and sort of the playwright's vision, but then it's your job as a director to interpret it and make it your own. But then there are some shows where the director will become the writer as well and sort of take on both roles. That is called devised theater, and you get to devise as a team what the play is, what the script is. So, but for me, usually I am handed it from a playwright, and then I take it and direct it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So we got a few in the chat. Trinity asked, well, she had two questions. First, what's your favorite thing about your job?
I love people and I love working with people. And I also love being able to share art and to talk about it. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of access to the arts besides only in high school. So I couldn't see a lot of shows, and we never came down to the city, and I never went to a large theater to see it. So now the fact that I'm able to do that and provide opportunities for others to do that is one of my favorite parts. And then just collaborating with a bunch of different people to make art is definitely my favorite part.
Thank you. Michael asked, what was your favorite project that you've ever worked on? Yeah, they got some tough ones for you today.
I know. Let's see. I'm gonna say, this is really tough. I can't pick a favorite. I'm gonna pick two favorites. I hope that's okay. One
Cheater.
favorite, I know, I'm a cheater. One favorite is I made my own show called With Love, and it was a project where I had a survey that went out to a big group of people, and hundreds of people responded, and I asked them questions about their love lives and stories about relationships, and people anonymously submitted these stories, and I took them and wrote a show with their words, and then I found songs, musicals from various musicals, contemporary songs, and incorporated them into the show and created this 80-minute performance that then was presented. And so I love that project because it was really meaningful to me, and was something that I kind of created from the ground up. And then the other one that I'll mention is the most recently, when Hamilton was in town last, we got to do a Hamilton education program where thousands of students in high school got to come and see the show. And they also worked in their class on writing poems and stories in the same process that the playwright of Hamilton did, Lin-Manuel Miranda. And it was a really cool project that you got to see from start to finish, and super creative. And I worked as a project manager on that, and I really loved that one as well.
Awesome. Well, Trinity responded to that. That's so creative, and then pure talent in all caps. So you got some fans here. And I have to ask, just my own curiosity as a musical theater nerd, how many of the songs from that did you pull directly? Like, was there like really heavy in Jason Robert Brown, or because all I'm thinking is like last 5 years would just be like, could be that whole thing, So did you pull from any artists in particular, or was it really a smorgasbord?
It was a smorgasbord for sure. There were some songs that you would know from composers. There might have been one Jason Robert Brown in there, but then I tried to find some new contemporary writers that you might not have heard from, or you know, that I just like discovered from a random cabaret act that told that story. So I think Adam Guan was another one. There's a couple others, but yeah.
Very cool. Nice. Thank you. So Trinity asked, what is your favorite role you've played? And is there a role you had trouble getting into character with?
My favorite role was probably William Barfay, the one photo that I showed of in Putnam County Spelling Bee, because that character is really ridiculous. The show itself is about a spelling bee, and it's a group of weirdos in high school, elementary school actually, that are at the spelling bee, and they are competing to win. And my character, his weird thing during the spelling bee is Barfay pictures the words that he has to spell by writing it out with his foot. And so he'll spell it on the stage with his foot, and it's like this little dance thing. And then once he visualizes it, he'll say it out loud. But he also has a little bit of a lisp and like these big glasses, and he's super nerdy. And that was one of my just most fun roles that I've ever played.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Danielle asked, do you go through training when starting a new role?
I have my own process to learn a character and to start a new role. But I didn't go to, as you heard, like I didn't go to school for musical theater or for performance or acting. It was the other thing that I really love doing. And I've sort of like picked up some training with classes and whatnot along the way, but not an official degree. But every time that I start a new role, I spend a lot of time learning about that character, learning about the history of the show. I'll watch some other videos of people and how they do it. And then, you know, I'll get up in front of a mirror when no one else is watching, and we'll try it myself and see, you know, what it looks like and how I feel about it. So yes, I do that sort of research and training before I get into any role.
Awesome. Thank you. And then at least for right now, the last question in the chat, Nicoya asked, what was your favorite part of playing Corny Collins in Hairspray?
He's so corny.
That's a really fun show.
It is. It's really fun. I really like to dance. I'm probably not the best dancer, but I like to dance. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of playing that show. It's also fun because the part itself isn't huge, so there's not like a lot to like memorize and learn, but you're very memorable, right? So like when you're on stage, you are the one like guiding the ship a little bit, and then you're off and you have a little break. And so I kind of like that too.
I got kicked out, so I don't know if somebody asked this, but like, did you ever have to go into character who had an accent or something that you had to, you know, pick up? That was
not. I am not like Mr. Jeremy and love accents, so I have never done like any sort of like British accent or anything like that. I will find ways to adjust my like vocal tone a bit. You know, like when I played Rooster in Annie, he's a little bit more like skeevy, tricky. So I would adjust my voice a little bit to be a little bit lower and a little bit like, hey, ooh, what, you know. And so I'll adjust a little bit that way, but yeah, not like full accents.
And Raynell, I know this isn't my presentation, but part of that work that Mr. Seth talked about when Danielle asked about training for a new role, part of that getting into the character is kind of figuring out whether they talk in a high register or a low register, whether they talk fast or slow or use slang or speak properly. And so I think you might be surprised at how naturally changes in the way that you speak come about when you're really in that character, because it would feel unnatural when you're in that character to talk any other way. So, you know, it might be that you don't even notice you're changing your voice, but it's happening naturally as you're getting into character. You know, I always think of, I was fortunate enough to play a character called Herr Schultz in Cabaret, who's like a really, really old guy in Germany in World War II. And, you know, everyone was like, oh, when did you learn that accent? I was like, what accent? And whatever. And it turns out that I was like, I didn't even realize it, but I was imitating my rabbi from my temple. And so it's like, you might not even realize you're doing it, but you slip into it. And with people who are really dedicated to it, like Mr. Seth, you know, it might just come naturally without really realizing it. So I think you'd be surprised.
That's on All American. I don't know if anybody watched that, but Daniel, I think his name is, he has
I
a
watched
British
it.
accent. He has a
Mhm.
British accent, and on the show, like I never knew he had an accent until he was on
Me either. I
one
didn't know he was British.
show, and then he was talking. I was like, "That's his voice."
Yeah,
And
it's
there's a
super
lot of
weird, right?
yes, and I'm like, "All right, so which one's the real voice?" Because they both sound natural. So I'm
Yeah.
like, "What is this?"
Yeah, it's like Trinity. I know that you like Grey's Anatomy, but did anyone ever watch the show House?
Hey,
Mm-mm.
what's that?
House. Okay,
Yeah.
so House is another medical drama show. It's a little bit, yeah, Miss Carly shaking her head. Yeah, no, he's funny as heck. But the funny thing is that that was the first thing I'd ever seen this guy Hugh Laurie in, but he's British. And the first time he presented at some awards show, like the Emmys, or was it the Emmys for TV? And he was presenting and no one was applauding, because everyone was so caught off guard by the fact that he was speaking with a British accent and no one realized that he was British. So sometimes it can really throw you off when someone's really, really good. It can be really confusing. It's like, what did you do with Dr. House? Get Hugh Laurie off the stage. Bring House out here. So you're not alone in that feeling.
Tom Holland's British, but he
Mhm.
don't sound, he Spider-Man, but he like talks with them like an
Yeah.
American.
Right, yeah.
And then there's
They
the
say-
opposite, where like John Malkovich will do a Russian accent and you're like, no. That's not a Russian accent. Like, I don't believe that at all. So
And then they say like, for Daniel, he said he had to go to Crenshaw and listen and like pay attention to how they talk and like note down so that he can mimic it and like make it sound natural, because there'll be some actresses or actors who don't sound like they have an accent and you know they're forcing it. So
Yeah.
when it comes natural, they like have to really study it.
That's actually a good point, that on some shows too, that like you have to really study an accent. They'll have dialect coaches and people on staff that only focus in on your dialect and on the way that your voice is, and you know what accent that you're taking on. So that is something that, like, you know, depending on the show and what it is, that someone will have to come in and help. And it's usually a speech language pathologist or speech therapist that takes on that job and helps you get the right accent.
So if anybody ever doubted me or Miss Carla when we said there is a job out there that hones right in on your passion, that should be all the proof that you need, that there are people where their only job is to help professional or non-professional actors with accents.
Mhm.
So there is nothing in our modern world that is too specific for you to be able to follow your dream and really make a career out of it if you put in the work, make sure you're meeting the right people and keeping at it, right? That's huge. And Nicoya said that's what they had to do with WandaVision for the decades. Yes, they did. Especially since there was that country that doesn't really exist from like Russia, Eastern Europe. What was the country? I forget what it was called, but yeah, especially when you're doing a fake accent, it's really tricky. Wonderful. Oh, I love these conversations that just pop up in our Friday speakers. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or statements, or for Mr. Seth, or about what we've been talking about? Nicoya said, I never understood Elizabeth Olsen. Seth, Mr. Seth, I'm not sure. Can you provide any help for that?
No, but I agree with you. It did appear and disappear in WandaVision, and I never really understood that.
Especially with the budget that they had for that show. I was like, really, y'all couldn't do that take again? All right,
Yeah.
cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Seth, for being here. Thank you so much, Trinity, Nicoya, Michael, Danielle, and Raynell, for being here and sticking with us the whole time, and for a couple of you all for battling with your internet connections to get back in here. We really appreciate you. I'm very excited to say that we are actually planning for the summer. We're trying to get a tour of one of the theaters that that the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and Mr. Seth helped to run. So if anybody is interested in theater, performing arts, and everything, and there's a lot, everything that happens behind the scenes, definitely keep an eye out on the band and our announcements for when that's going to happen, because that's going to be, I know that I'm probably more excited about it than anybody else, but it's going to be really cool. So keep an eye out for that too.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to get to see you all in person too. So hopefully you check
I
that
know,
out.
what a thought, right? Seeing
know.
people in face
Wild.
like face to face. What? Awesome. Well, can we have
Thank you so much, Seth. It was great. I was listening on and off camera, but I was so excited. I'm like, they had great questions today too. So thank you guys for those wonderful questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
can we have if not cameras on, at least mics unmuted? Thank you, and round of applause for Mr. Seth, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Have a great
weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye.